that everything, you know, that are set alcoholism, AA, and God. We ask for an open mind. We have to
Have any experience
help us to
with
Charlie, hold on a second. We're good now.
Well, when Ashley talks, people listen. See how quiet that got? This comes from the forward to the first edition of the Big Book. We of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. For them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. We think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. I'm Charlie Parker. I'm a very grateful alcoholic. Hi, everybody. My sobriety date is March 22nd of 1985, and I am truly grateful for that. Let's see. Here's a little note on online etiquette. Please keep your audio turned off unless you're speaking to the whole group, so we can cut down on background noise. When sharing or making an announcement, we ask that you turn on your video so we can see your beautiful face. However, it's not a requirement. If you feel uncomfortable showing your face online, we'll still allow you to share. The recording feature has been turned off. You know, a couple other little etiquette things. I mean, if you got to get up and move around a lot, you can right-click on the little box with your picture in it and hit the stop video button, and it'll go. And so we don't have to. I've got a really funny list of stuff I've seen on people's little boxes this year, but we're not going to go into that tonight. Welcome to the online version of the regular Tuesday night open Big Book study meeting of the primary purpose group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Austin, Texas. This is an open meeting, and as such, all who have an interest in alcoholism and our program of recovery are welcome. Because this is an open meeting, you don't have to identify yourself or your reason for being here if you don't wish to do so. Your anonymity will be protected. We ask that you protect ours. While this is an open meeting, membership in AA is limited to those who have a serious drinking problem and have a desire to stop drinking for good. A lot of people introduce themselves before the meeting. I want to give a special shout out to David from South Carolina. It's good to see you, buddy. Okay, Ashley, it says, our seventh tradition states that each group ought to be fully self-supporting through their own contributions. If this is your first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, we ask that you be our guest. We're glad you're here, and we hope you come back and become a part of our lives. On the other hand, if it's a regular meeting for you, you can handle a couple of bucks. It really helps out because we only meet once a week. We're doing donations through Venmo. And there's the Venmo instructions right there. And we're at primary purpose at Group Austin. That's been going really well. I want to thank everybody. Okay, announcements. Do we have any announcements?
Yes, we do. Ashley's got a big one.
Okay.
Yes. Awesome. Hi. Okay, so we are going, we have decided to start back finally as far as our in-person meeting and resume primary purpose group Austin on our Tuesday nights. So everybody that is in Austin and our home group, we will start and we will, the 18th, is that what we said? So the 18th, so that's in 2 weeks, we will start back in person. At that week, so the 19th will be the first week, and we will move the virtual, so this Zoom, same exact platform, same exact Zoom ID. So if you were in this meeting, you have the information to be able to log on to the same meeting. It's just going to move same time, but on Wednesdays. So that will be August 19th is when we will change this platform to go online to on Wednesdays, and then we'll be in person on regular Tuesdays.
And Ashley, will you tell everybody, so the people that are local and want to decide whether or not they want to come to the Tuesday night meeting, will you tell us what procedures we'll have in place to protect everybody?
So there's going to be a lot of changes. There are going to be masks required for entry. We're not going to have tables set up. So for everybody that is there, we're not going to have tables. We're going to just have chairs. So it'll allow more people, but also the social distancing to be able to be better, able for everybody to be able to keep their distances and spread out. We're going to have sanitation stations. We're not going to serve coffee or anything like that. We're not going to have shared books. So bring your mask, bring your own books. We're not going to do shared books. We are going to be sitting in individual chairs, not tables. No coffee, no snacks.
And we're not going to pass around microphones, right?
And we're not going to pass around microphones, correct. I think that's about it. Anybody that wants to help volunteer that's local, then shoot me an email, text, or chat. We are looking for a few people to help us kind of set up. It's going to be.
What about big books and study guides?
We're not going to we're not going to share those.
You probably already said that, didn't you?
Yes.
So Tyler is our hospitality czar, which, by the way, for everybody out there, I think it's really unfair that the hospitality czar gets to be a czar. Like, for instance, why does the treasurer could be like money czar? You know what I mean? Why does he get to be? But anyway, so Tyler's going to do a kind of head of crew setting the place up, but then we'll can always use volunteers for setting things up and for cleaning up, because we'll have to sanitize everything. I would assume, well, definitely after the meeting. I don't know, probably before too. So anyway, yeah. If you're interested in helping out with that, contact Ashley. And again, just to repeat, so there's no confusion. This Tuesday we're online. Next Tuesday, which will be August the 11th, we'll still be online on Tuesday night. And then the following Tuesday, on the 18th, we'll meet at the church. And this Zoom meeting will switch over to Wednesdays moving forward.
Right.
If you log on a Tuesday night and we're not here, come back the next time.
Yeah.
Yes. And we do realize that some people are not going to be comfortable in person, and that is fine. We're going to do our best, but this is something, so if you're not comfortable with how it's going to go down and in person, then we're still going to be online. So that goes to everybody, far and then for our local members.
Yeah, and if you're in Ireland, you don't have to come to the church. You can come to the Zoom meeting. Okay, more announcements. Here's a big one that I don't know why I haven't announced this until tonight. One of the coolest things we do at the Primary Purpose Group is we conduct a foundation meeting. And we do that every week when we're meeting at the church. And what happens is we take the people who are new to AA or new to this group, or even people that have never been to the foundation meeting before but may have a lot of experience in AA, but we take people out to another room, and then one of our members presents this foundation meeting. And what it is it's a talk on what alcoholism is, what Alcoholics Anonymous is, what our group kind of stands for, what's the big deal about the big book, kind of some of that need to know information. Charlie likes to call it a crash course. And we that's something that's really cool that we do, because sometimes, if you're new to AA and we're in the chapter 2 employers, that may not be what you need to hear on that night. So that's a big thing that we do. Well, we haven't been doing it since we've been meeting online, but what we do have is on the website, austinppg.org. There's a link for the foundation meeting, and there's one on there that's been recorded. And we did one time for the whole group. So that recording is on there. So if anybody's ever interested in listening to that, it's a great thing for like I say, for anybody new coming in. but it's also a great thing to listen to if you're trying to learn how to better carry the message, like into a treatment center or a jail or some sort of institution. So it's a great thing to listen to. If you've never heard it, we highly recommend it. It's something we kind of put together as a group. And so you would go to austinppg.org and just follow the links. Click on Foundation Meeting, and then under the microphone on that page, there's a link to a recorded Foundation meeting. All right.
And one last thing that a few people had asked. So when we start the Wednesday night Zoom, we will be starting over at the beginning.
At the preface?
Maybe at the doctor's opinion.
Okay, how we doing?
Good. You want to announce the sponsors, Charlie, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay, next thing. It says here, somebody's looking for a sponsor. If you came here tonight without a sponsor, there's no reason to leave without a sponsor. This is a big deal. It's really important for what we do here in AA. It doesn't cost a dime, and it's part of what we do to stay sober. If there's anyone tonight looking for a sponsor, send me an email. My email address is right here below my beautiful face is my email address. Send me an email and we'll get you set up with somebody. And that's not just for if you're new. You know, if you've been in AA for a while and you're not really experiencing what you're hearing people talk about, send me an email. If you're just out there trying to get sober and can't figure out how to do it, send me an email, whatever it may be. And I won't be the one to do it, but I'll get you your name out to the right person, and we'll get you set up with a sponsor. Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, before we study the big book, what tradition are we on, Chad?
1.
We're going back around to the first tradition. Before we study the big book tonight, we're going to review the first tradition in its long and short form. Steve is going to read the first tradition, the long form, short form, and this is on page 562 if you have a 4th edition big book.
We got to unmute him. Sorry. Hang on, Steve. I'm slipping. Okay, go, buddy.
Okay, thanks, guys. My name is Steve, and I'm an alcoholic. Our first tradition states that our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. Our AA experience has taught us that each member of Alcoholics Anonymous is but a small part of a great whole. AA must continue to live, or most of us will surely die. Hence, our common welfare comes first, but individual welfare follows close afterward.
Okay, in the spirit of the 12 traditions, our group conscience has elected to use a big book study guide to help us stay focused on our study of the AA Big Book. There are 1 or more questions for darn near every sentence in the basic text. The chairperson will read a question, and then a member will read the related sentence. It's okay to comment more than once in this meeting, but please stay focused on the text at hand. If comments begin to drift off track, it's the responsibility of the chairperson to redirect the discussion. Now here's the big difference between this big book study and a lot of big book study meetings. There's some great big book study meetings where they read a little bit of the book and people talk about their experience with it. At this meeting, we're not trying to do that. We're trying to talk about what were our founders trying to say. If they had put it in a book form, what were they trying to say? Why are they saying it now? That sort of thing. How to share. Select participants at the bottom of your screen, select more, and then raise your hand. Select raise your hand. Ashley will notify Chad whose hands are raised. They'll call on you. But we're probably not going to get to everybody tonight. We got 527 people so far. So, but try not to talk for 20 minutes if you do go. And lastly, we have a 1936 Webster's Dictionary. If you want to see what a word means, or what it meant at the time they were writing the big book, just virtually raise your hand, call it out, and we'll look it up. Okay, tonight we're on page 76 in the big book. And boy, I hated missing 6 and 7 last week, but there's a lot of, it's funny, one of the things you hear in the rooms a lot of times, you hear people say, well, you got to have the 12 and 12 for 6 and 7 because it's only 2 little paragraphs in a big book, but we spent 75 pages preparing for those 2 little paragraphs. And if you were here last week, you saw the kind of power that can come out of those 2 paragraphs. But I mean, to me, basically 6 and 7 boil down to whatever this is it objectionable to me? All the stuff that came out of the 4th column of my inventory. If it's objectionable to me, do I have the power to change it on my own? And if it's objectionable, I don't have the power to change it on my own. Am I willing to let God change it in whatever way he sees fit? If those 3 things are in place, then we take it to God in a 7-step prayer, and we close our meeting with the 7-step prayer every week, so we'll get to say it again later. So where does that find ourselves? Chad's going to read. Chad, I think it's got to just be 1 paragraph.
Okay.
Middle of page 76.
Middle of page 76. Now we need more action, without which we find that faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol.
P12A in the study guide, whenever there's an A and a B, there's more than 1 question for a sentence. What do we need now? Read 5 words.
Now we need more action.
Why do we need it?
Without which we find that faith without works is dead.
Again, we are reminded this is a program of action. What steps will we look at now?
Let's look at steps 8 and 9.
What do we have?
We have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we are willing to make amends.
Where'd that come from?
We made it when we took inventory.
What do we do now?
We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal.
Why do we go out to see our family, friends, and neighbors?
Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past.
What do we really try to do?
We attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves.
It says the following is the 8-step prayer. What do we pray for?
If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes.
What must we remember?
Remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol.
Okay, any comments on that paragraph? Chad, how do I raise my hand?
You can't, you're a host, so you just have to jump in. Okay, first up, we've got Stephen Long. Oh, there we go.
I'm Stephen Long, grateful recovered alcoholic. Man, I love this portion of the book. This is where it starts getting real, man. I get to take this stuff out, all this awareness that God and my mentor has given me, and all the awareness that I've gained up to this point. And I get to take it out to the universe, man. And the book is outlining me on a few things, what to expect as I go out into the universe, man. And this one paragraph here, in the way that I see this book roll out, is this one paragraph here. We're talking about 8-step stuff. My experience with this text is that this is about, and there's a couple other places where it talks about a list, but this is the 8-step. And then after this, it's really going to break down different angles of amends, what to expect with different things, some guidance, some direct things to do as we're rolling up on amends. But the first thing that I want to say is the delusion with the first thing I want to say is that each step holds its own power. Okay. And I'll get into that spot where I'll say 6 and 7, or I'll say 8 and 9. Even the book says 8 and 9, but I got to be real clear that each step holds its own power, and I can't morph 8 into 9, and I can't morph 6 into 7. Each one holds its own power, and there's a reason there's two separate steps. The other thing that I want to hit on here is we made it when we took our inventory. I know for me, there was a lot of delusion around that when I first came into the 8th step, the first time I did that. And my delusion was that came out of the first column of my resentment inventory. And I sat in an amends list with people that I never harmed, not once. And through good sponsorship and good mentorship, Kat sat down with me and explained that comes out of our 4th column and our self-seeking and where I actually went out and harmed somebody. So I look in my self-seeking in that area, that selfish action in my 4th column of my resentment inventory, and I also look at my conduct of whom did I hurt. We have a preset list there that I can put down on paper, and I look at all that inventory and I take it to God and ask God, hey man, thank you for showing me who I've harmed. And it's real funny to me, man, that it's still crazy to me today that my mind will create a list and I'll be like, yeah, no, that's it. And I'll be instructed to go to God, and I'll go to God, and God's got a lot more amends for me than I usually have for myself. And I'll go to God in that 8th step, and I'll start writing, and I come out the other side still baffled that God saw more than I did. Then this other piece here, I'm gonna be real quick, where it says we attempted. For me, I think that's important. As I'm rolling up on these amends, I have this perception that amends are going to go this way or go that way. The book is very clear with me, man, that we've attempted. That's something I want to pay attention to. It's usually not going to go the way that I think it is, whether it's good or bad. The book is just letting me know, hey, man, we're going to attempt to do this, and it's not a win or a loss, regardless of how it turns out, man. This is us going out and getting closer to God and giving back what we so freely took from people. At the end here, it says we would go to any lengths. Remember, it was agreed at the beginning that we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Again, thank God for good mentorship who taught me to turn statements into questions. And that's definitely a question that I have to take in a lot of times to the amends process, to a lot of things that I do. But definitely the amends process, because ego will buck on these things, man. And what I've learned over time and what I've experienced over time with this amends process is that it's a law of attraction, man. I think the biggest thing for me, and I'll hear things in the room sometimes, not so much this room, but I'll hear things in other rooms, and I'll hear things like, at least I'm free when it comes to the amends process. And again, my mentorship and sponsorship and teachers are very clear with me that this amends process isn't about me, Stephen. It's not about you. Hopefully, by the time we get to the end of this house cleaning process and we're going out, we're approaching these people or these businesses or this money or whatever it might be, I'm on a different footing. God is doing God's work, especially like what Charlie was talking about in that 6 and 7, and God is starting to show up in my life. And now I'm making amends with people because, man, I honestly don't want to harm you anymore, man. And absolutely freedom is going to show up. That's been my experience, but that's a byproduct. The intention is, man, I just don't want to harm you anymore, man. You know, I don't want to hurt you anymore, brother. And I see that I've done that for a long time. How can I make this right if I can? And then take that feedback, and the basis of the amends is not the approach. The basis of the amends is what I'm doing with it. How am I showing up in this individual's life and everybody else's life once I'm brought the awareness from this individual? Am I paying the money back? Am I showing up kind and tolerant? Am I showing up loving? Whatever it is that they're asking, am I being happy when I approach people who say, I just want you to be happy? Is that how I'm showing up? And that's the basis of the amends. That's what I'm doing with the amends process, leaning on God so I can show up the way that these people ask me to show up. That's all I got. Thanks.
God dang, Stephen, leave us a bone on the plate.
Steve, let's see, Steve Berry. Now, Steve, I'm going to unmute you. I don't know if your hand's up to read or if your hand's up to share.
It was just to read the tradition, but Stephen just said everything I wanted to say, so thanks.
He said everything we all wanted to say.
Well, I'll go ahead and say 2 definitions then, while you call on the next person. So we have a definition for amends, and that is to free from fault, correct, rectify, to change or modify in a way for the better, to improve. And then repair, one of the definitions is to restore to a sound or good state after decay or injury, to remedy and heal.
Okay. Chip, I'm unmuting you, and remember to slow down a little bit. We want to hear every word.
Yes, sir. Hey, I'm Chip. I'm alcoholic.
Hey, Chip.
Again, I would like to point out, every time God wants to do something for us, with us, to us, he's upfront and honest about it. And the 8th step, are you willing to? And if you look at the structures of the steps too, the 9th step, one of the ways I understand it is, I call it the emergence of the agent of God. It's the culmination. If you look at 10, 11, 12, it's continue, improve, practice. So the 9th step is where we become, maximum service to God and our fellows. And so we're trying to, he showed us, and the first thing he wants us to be, we're going to be whatever God wants us to be. The first thing he wants us to be is wrong. We were wrong about a lot of stuff, but he's going to share his grace with us, and he's going to learn how to teach us how to take a sting out of a wrong. We're going to try to make amends for it. We're going to change this stuff. We're going to transform bad relationships into good sometimes and stuff. But of course, we can't fix anybody. We just do what we're supposed to do. And when I made my inventory, it was all on there. I was mad at God, I was mad at myself, and I was mad at the world. So that pretty much covers everything, But I hate the disease too, but it's nothing. So I hate nothing, but I try not to hate, because that's what taught me how to hate. So, but it's basically right there. But I just wanted to point out that he's upfront and honest about everything he wants to do to change us. And unlike the disease, the disease it just does it if we don't, If I don't ask God to tell me who and what I need to be doing and what I am, the disease doesn't ask, it just does it. But anyway, thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Chip. Good stuff. Okay, Raquel.
Hi, everybody. My name is Raquel. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I want to say one more time, it's a pleasure being in this meeting. And I want to thank you for actually considering having the meeting on Wednesday for those of us who don't live in Texas. So thank you very much, because I was getting very sad. And now I just love, when you open the meeting and you always talk about this, what our founders were trying to tell me. I just love that. I cannot stop thinking about that. And now I go into, now we need more action. I'm thinking about this, like even last week we were talking about how we pocket our pride, in the weeks before, how we pocket our pride and go to it, and all the effort that it takes for an alcoholic that's just trying to get better. And now they're saying, okay, now you did great, but guess what? There's more action, because faith without works is dead. And I remember last week we were talking about the prayer we say after we finish the 5th step, that we thank God from the bottom of my heart that I know him better. Now I have the faith, I have the hope, I can have something else. But they're telling me, if I don't get into more action, then all what I got before, all that amazing feeling that I got when I did that prayer, might not be as effective. And I love when you said the question, like, where do we have this list from? I said, oh, we did it when we did inventory. I actually love that, because that inventory, again, I love when it says, we are just trying to sweep again the debris that I accumulated when I was trying to play God myself. And again, how we go to those magic pages from 60 to 63, all these pages that tell me what it is that I do constantly, that I constantly hurt my fellows. And the last thing that I love was the word remember. Is like, remember, you said you're in this, like, just like we made an agreement at the beginning, but it's worthwhile. Like, I find it very kind for him to say one more time, our founders to say, remember, we said that we were going to go to every length. It's like, don't worry, it's all okay, I just love it, and thank you again for being here for all of us.
Thanks, Raquel. Good stuff. Okay. Next up is Robert from Cabo.
Hey, everybody. My name is Robert. I'm an alcoholic. And, this book is so perfect, and it's so perfectly written. And I really do believe it is divinely inspired. And it's baffling to think about how Bill Wilson wrote this with 3 years of sobriety. And Clancy has a pitch about that, about how he doesn't want anyone with 3 years of sobriety left unattended on his property. So it's just amazing what's happened here. And now we need more action. And that's one of the motifs and the themes of the big book is action. And it talks about launching on a vigorous course of action in the 4th step. Now we need more action in the 5th step. Now we need more action in the 8th step and the 9th step. And then at the end of this chapter, it says that we need more action and talks about faith without works being dead again. And so Bill, you know, he really knew us alcoholics and what we needed was just to be slammed over the head time and time again with these same suggestions over and over and over. There's action and more action. And you can't overdo AA. You can only underdo it. And that's how it is for me. And I think us alcoholics is that, you know, I'm just learning the same lessons over and over and over and over. And just like Mark talks about, you know, my ego gets more crafty the longer I stay sober. It just comes back at me in different ways. But the solution is always the same: is action and more action. And it's ironic here where it says how we have a list of persons that was harmed that we made when we took inventory. And my sponsor showed me how this 8th step is connected to the 4th step and how Bill Wilson does a lot of foreshadowing and references and allusions to different things that we're going to do earlier in the book. Because it says in the 4th step that we became willing to set these matters straight. So while I'm doing my 4th step, they're already getting me ready to do my 8th and 9th step. And sweeping away the debris that's accumulated out of my effort to live on self-will, well, that's my basic, and run the show ourselves. That's my basic problem, is that I'm a self-seeker even when trying to be kind, and selfishness and self-centeredness and self-will and trying to run the show. And I'm still trying to do that, you know, down at my home group. You know, I don't want anybody getting out of line while I'm leaving the meeting, and here at home and at work and everywhere else. So my basic trouble continues to haunt me. And it also makes reference to this in the 11th step, where it talks about that I'm letting God run the show, and that I'm not burning up energy foolishly as I was when I was trying to run the show myself. And, you know, I take a breath and learn to slow down, take some time, and let things be as they are. But it still comes up. And this last sentence about remembering that at the beginning, that I would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. Well, that's where a guy's balking at steps 8 and 9, because it says that some of these we balk. That you know, in sales here, we do tie down. So that's a verbal confirmation with the customer that they're understanding and reading my mail what they say. So that's a little tie down that I have to be consistent in the agreement that I made at the beginning of chapter 5 with the guy and say, you're willing to go to any lengths, right? So when we go through all that work of steps 3, 4, and 5, and we get to 8 and 9, he starts balking. And the book says, well, remember, you were willing to go to any lengths. So what about now? And that's all I have to share. I love being with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Good stuff. Charlie?
Thanks. I'm Charlie. I'm an alcoholic. There's been some great stuff said. I wanted to kind of piggyback on what Robert was saying. I talk all the time about the self piece and pages 60 to 63 and how revolutionary that was well into my sobriety, because I missed it for so long. And I used to feel bad about talking about what I'd missed until I realized how much company I had. And there's a whole bunch of us that have gone right from the 2nd step to the 3rd step prayer and skipped that body of work in pages 60 to 63. And that was my experience. And I would read the book, and I wasn't looking, we call it a confirmation bias. I wasn't looking for new information. I was looking for confirmation of what I thought I already knew. So I would only look for stuff that I agreed with. And the book, so stuff that was outside my understanding just went right over my head. And, you know, and when you get it, and like Robert was talking about, on page 60, when we get to step 3, first requirement is we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And you get over to 62, it says selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our trouble. Above everything, we have to be rid of this selfishness. You know, how did I miss that for so long? When you get over to 64, at the beginning of the 4th step, it says being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. You know, then we do the 4th step. We look for the common ways that self shows up at the end of the 4th step. It says, we hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. And then when we get into the 8th step, it says we attempt to sweep away the debris which is accumulated out of our effort to live life on self-will and run the show ourselves. So, I mean, it's like, my God, I was asleep, dreaming I was awake to not see this stuff. I mean, how could I possibly, you know, and it changes the whole direction, and we're just bringing it into these amends, that self piece, you know. Remember, we're in 4 through 9, we're trying to remove what's blocking us from this power. That's the only thing that's going to get us out of self. I can't get over self, myself, and I can't quit playing God without God. So that's why we're trying to remove what's blocking me from this stuff in 4 through 9. Now, the last thing I want to say is I struggled for a long time with this thing. On page 70, at the end of the 4th step, it says, we have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. I didn't have that. You know, when we got over here in the 8th step, it says, we have a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom we're willing to make amends. And I went on a survey of all my heroes in the name. Why does it say that? I didn't make a list of all the people I've harmed, you know, and different people said different things. When I came to Mark Houston, he said, I don't know, but if you work with me in the 4th step and the 8th step are going to be separate amends. And I was like, fine, you know, I mean, because that's the way I'd always said it. There are lines in the inventory process, in the sex inventory. There's one paragraph that if you take it abstractly, you could use it as making out all the things we've harmed, but it talks about sex above it, talks about sex right after it. But so don't feel bad if you have to, you know, it's funny how many people do things differently, and we all say we're coming right out of the big book. But this is one where I think, you know, I don't think people are dying because they're making their amends list at the wrong time. If anything, it's because they're not doing amends at all, you know. So that's just really, it's funny. That's an interesting piece. Okay, thanks for calling on me.
Thanks, Charlie. Good stuff. All right, next up is going to be Rick W. from Baltimore.
Hey. Okay, hi everybody, I'm Rick, an alcoholic. First thing I want to say is I really appreciate this because what you guys are doing on a large scale is something that my old sponsor and I did something like 38 years ago on a small scale in private homes. It took us a year to get through the basic 164 pages, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Since then, I've been at countless big book meetings where they read a whole chapter or they read a story and then spend 15 minutes discussing it and call themselves having a big book meeting. But anyway, I'm glad you're here. About this text, I got sober in 1980, this month in 1980, in fact, and my sponsor in 1979 in Phoenix, Arizona, I was in New Orleans, and his sponsor got sober in Akron, Ohio in about 1946. So that's big book, hardcore sponsorship, and that's what I got. My sponsor would not allow me to look at any other literature. We used the book. He told me once, he said, if I ever tell you anything that contradicts something in the book, he said, believe the book. So we get to this step, and we're going over it, and it says, and he says, okay, now you need to make a list. You need to make an 8-step list. And I thought, I got him. I said, Ray, look, it says right here, I have a list already. I made it when I took inventory. And he said, yeah, I know what it says. I can read the damn thing. Make a list anyway. I thought, oh, what the hell? What's he doing? And it took me a long time to realize what he was doing. First of all, it took me a month to make that list. It's the work of 5 minutes, copying names from one sheet of paper to another. And he had to finally speak harshly to me to get me to do it. I think he knew that I needed a little extra action, and it's like putting those names down on paper on a separate list is just concrete evidence that I'm about to get ready and go out and do something I really don't want to do. Even though I know I have to do it, it's part of this program, but I really don't want to, and I was putting it off. If he let me just work off the initial list that I had, I probably would have put it off longer. So I've thought about that many times over the years. The only thing that Ray Jacklin ever told me that wasn't directly in the book, and he had a good reason for it. That's all I got, thanks.
Thanks, Ray. All right, next up will be Carrie and Scotty.
Hi, everybody. My name's Carrie. That's going to be Carrie, not Scotty. I'm an alcoholic. So the thing that leaps out to me, and I'm going to keep away from my experience, but that's probably all I have to say, is the line, if we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. I so feel like, our founders, based on their experience, knew their audience. I think I've said that before at this meeting, and there's a solution for the resistance that we feel when we have to humble ourselves and when we have to maybe admit that we're wrong or face people that are scary. The word scary sounds like a little girl word, but when faced with the prospect, and I think this is true as a human, but most especially as an alcoholic, of having to make things right, admit our wrongs, heal some relationship where we have a part, right? I just know that there have been, and it's always hard for me, I'm still learning at this meeting to stay away from my experience and really stick to what the founders meant. And so I'll just leave it with, they knew their audience. This is a difficult task. They acknowledge that it's a difficult task. And then again, as a couple of other people have said, I think, they remind us. I need reminders. I made a commitment, right? I made a commitment that I was going to do this deal. I made a commitment that I wanted to live instead of die, instead of kill myself. Yeah, I just love that part, and I had to have that part explained to me when I balked, at certain things over the years. So I'm grateful for. There's single lines in this book that I am so grateful for, and that is one of them.
Thanks, Carrie. Good stuff. And yes, it is tricky learning how to share in this meeting. You're not the only one that struggles with it. I know that I sure struggled with it. Okay. And you did great, by the way. PJ, speaking of great, presenting PJ.
Hey, thanks, Chad. Hi, everybody. I'm PJ. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Paige.
And Charlie,
what happened?
Like that birthday meeting you and I made in Vegas a bunch of years back. So that'd be a fun one. Anyway, I love what a lot of folks everybody said here tonight. I really love what Carrie was just talking about, and that's what I focused in on. We have a list of all persons we had harmed. I can read this sentence a couple of ways. And to whom we are willing to make amends. There's part of me that says, out of my list, who am I willing to make amends to? Because to me, what that states is there could be people I'm willing and people that I'm not willing to make amends to. And when it comes down to it, the difference between making all of the amends that I need to make and making only amends to folks that I want to make amends to right, for me comes down to a deal going back to some of Charlie's discussion a second ago, is that bondage of self, right? If I truly bring God into this thing and I'm entirely willing, we just got done with a part at step 6 and 7 where it said we have emphasized willingness as being indispensable, right? If we still cling to something we will not let go of, we ask God to help until willing, right? We go back to step, everywhere from the end of step 1 and the second half of the first step, where we're willing to believe that, probably a power greater than myself should run my life. And then I'm entirely, willing to believe in a power greater than myself. And then I'm entirely willing to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And then I'm entirely willing, or I'm asking to be willing, to be searching and fearless when I take an inventory, as well as carry that into the 5th step. Then I get into the 6th step and the 7th step where we've just read that. Now we're at 8 and 9. To me, one of the key things to this is there's an emphasis on the willingness, right? The difference between climbing Mount Everest and knowing all the steps that it takes to climb Mount Everest is willingness, right? The people that make it to the top are willing to do it. They're willing to go to any lengths, right? And I've been in that same place. Charlie, I would argue that with you, some of the difference between your knowledge of the book now and your knowledge of the book back then was a difference in the willingness to understand different parts of the book, right? If I just say, hey, I've got a pretty good idea of what this thing says, then I really don't have to go very far. But if I say, man, God, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to really understand this, because I want to be able to carry this message to others. And I need to look beyond what I get out of this book. It's the same thing that you and I used to talk about the first couple of runs through this book, where you look at something and go, I've never read that sentence before. And I'd never read that sentence before in something like chapter 5 that I'd read 8 bazillion times, but I would look at something because I was willing to look at it differently that time, because I was willing to look at it in terms of how it might help you, as opposed to just mean what it could be around me, right? And so part of the emphasis here is we've gone from page 60, where it said we must now we're at step 3, right? We're making a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. We are 16 pages later, right? So the idea that gets propagated from time to time in the fellowship, that this should take a long time between step 3 and steps 8 and 9, right? If I'm pretty willing, that's a short amount of this book. That's like this much book. It ain't much book to go through to get to that point, right? So I would encourage people, carry that willingness through, because if I'm willing enough to turn my will and my life over to the care of God, and even believe in a power greater than myself, if I'm willing enough to jot down that inventory of all the things that I don't want to do, if I'm willing enough to ask God, remove those defects of character that I hold on to like the Holy Grail, right? If I'm going through those steps of willingness, and I'm getting that willingness from a power greater than myself, I can get through 8 and 9 pretty quickly as well, right? I can get efficiently through this book and start carrying this message to others. That's what I got. Thank you.
Good stuff, PJ.
I'll jump in with a few definitions real quick to follow that. We had a definition for willing. So willing is inclined, favorably disposed in mind, ready to act, prompt to do, to give, grant, and not slow or reluctant. I also had self-seeker is one who seeks only unduly in his own interest, advantage, or pleasure. And then drastic is acting rapidly, violently, or harshly in extreme effect. And then the last one is debris, and that was rubbish as results of destruction or ruin.
Thanks, Ashley.
Okay.
So just a couple of little references or connections in the book, and I know this one's already been discussed, where it talks about that we have a list. And if you just want to kind of look back and make your own call on whether or not we should have a list by now, by looking at what the book says, when Bill took the steps initially with Ebby, they weren't the 12 steps. it was the Oxford group version that our steps was in part derived from. And people, there's a lot of people out there that know a lot about the history, and that's really interesting stuff. But Bill says here on page 13, it says in the middle of the page, it says, we made a list of people I had hurt or toward whom I felt resentment. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. And then on page 67, in the fourth column of the resentment inventory, it says, when we saw our faults, we listed them, we placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. And then 2 pages over on 69 in the sex inventory, it says, whom had we hurt? And then on down a little bit, it says, where were we at fault? And it talks about how we got all this down on paper and looked at it. And then it's mentioned again on the bottom of page 70. Charlie talked about that. So that's just some places where you can kind of make a connection. And you know, some of us who are big book nerds, we've done a lot of research on trying to figure out whether we should have a list of our harms by the time we get to the 8th step, or if we still have some more things to list. So anyway, the important thing is to make sure we've got a complete list by this time. In the 8th step, I've heard it said before that the 2 most important words in the 8th step are all and all. So we want to have a complete list of all the people we've harmed. And not only that, but in the 8th step, we want to become willing to make amends to them all. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to make amends to them all. As the book gives us instructions on the 9th step, we're going to find out that there are some cases where, like when to do more harm or things like that, there are some amends that we can't make or we shouldn't make. But in the 8th step, what I tell guys is we want a complete list of all the people that I've harmed based on the inventory that we did, and we want a list of the harms for each person, all the harms. And then when we move into step 9, we'll ask God for direction and get some guidance and things like that on what we'll make amends for. The other thing I want to point out, 2 more things. Okay, one of them is this. It says, remember, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. I'm not going to pull up all the references on that one. I'm going to let you guys do that. It's a fun little exercise to find everywhere in the book that it talks about going to any length. And sometimes it says any length to stay sober, sometimes any length to have a spiritual experience or whatever. But I won't run the fun for you guys on that one. And then the last thing I want to say here, faith without works is dead is mentioned 3 times in the book. It's not quoted directly in Bill's story, but it's quoted directly on pages 76 and on page 88. And that of course is out of the book of James. And from what I understand, based on the history that I know, the book of James was required reading in early AA before they had the big book. There were a few books that were considered required reading, and the book of James from the Bible is one of those. And I used to hear in meetings about the God steps, how step 3 and step 7 and step 11, because they mentioned God and they were called the God step. I don't know if anybody else has been to meetings where that was kind of a popular thing to say. But it was pointed out to me one time because a lot of us in AA are agnostic or atheist. And we're coming in here and we know that we're pretty beat up by alcohol and we're willing to work a program, but just believing in God is a struggle for many of us. And it was pointed out to me that to really develop faith, that the 2 steps that are really going to do that are the steps where this quote is mentioned. Faith without works is dead is mentioned before amends and before we carry the message. Before steps 9 and 12. And it was pointed out to me that the God steps are 9 and 12. It's where we go out and take the action. We go clean up the past and we go help another alcoholic. And the point to this is if you struggle believing in God and you want to believe in God, go make your amends and go carry this message. Because what many of us find is that the hand of God is undeniable in that process. Okay, next up is Lil, and you are now, unmute, come on. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Lil. I am alcoholic. And so some of the things I was going to say have already been said. One thing I want to say is that phrase, faith without works is dead. That was actually, Lois Wilson loved that phrase. And she used to, I've listened to Lois on CDs many times. And she would say that, because this program is not theoretical. Theory kills alcoholics. We need to take action. And Lois understood that. She would remind Bill Wilson of that as well. The other thing I wanted to mention was that, so now where it says, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. And what this brings to mind is in step 5, where it says it is important that he fully understand and approve that what we are driving at, that he will not try to change our plan. And I have heard people giving their step 5s to people who are not in AA, it's not their sponsor, it's a therapist or whatever, and they say, oh, don't be too hard on yourself. And it's like, that is not what this is about. This is about ego reduction and facing up and stepping up in a way that I've never done before, and in ways that alcoholics don't do. We don't like to do that. The other thing is, yes, our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. And this line reminds me of the step 4, the fear inventory, where it talks about how self-reliance failed me, because it has all the way through my life. And it's a reminder of that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And we keep thinking it will work, but it doesn't work. And in step 3, it says, the great delusion, and I'm paraphrasing, the great delusion of every alcoholic is that the delusion is that he can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if he only manages well. And that's it. Thank you for asking me.
Amen. Thanks, Lil. Good stuff. All right, it's 8:30. Man, it is hard to end this meeting with some of the people still with their hands up, but it's 8:30.
You know, and that's one of the things we're going to bring into group conscience. There's been some talk about maybe making the online meeting 75 minutes. We've always talked about making the room meeting a little bit longer, but we had treatment centers that were coming that had to get home and stuff like that. But this meeting, people can leave if they need to. But I don't know. That's here's a reading. This comes from page 164 of the Big Book, as printed as Bill sees it on page 331. You know, what are we talking about here? If you read as Bill sees it, it has excerpts from letters and stuff that, you know, the Bill's written in the Big Book, and it says some of it may be adapted for clarity. And they made a literally change these last 2 paragraphs in the book that I thought Bill put this in there for clarity. I think it's powerful. See if we can figure out where they are. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But you obviously cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. For the newcomer, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Thanks for a great meeting, everybody. I want to welcome all of our visitors from all over the place. We congratulate anybody celebrating an anniversary this week. And we have a tradition of closing with the 7-step prayer. And we've been leaving the microphone open so we can all remember what the mind of a newcomer sounds like.
Thank you, Charlie.
That you should have all the time.
That you now remove from me.
No, remove from me. Single defect of character. Usefulness.
Me strength
And my fellow.
from here to do your bidding.
As I go.
Keep her a great meeting, everyone.
Thank you, Ashley and Charlie. I really appreciate it.